What a cold, dreary, drab day. Can't do anything fun outside. But you know what I can do inside? Film some Thomas toys! We've looked at wood, we've looked at plastic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a look at the diecast toys. Out of all of the collections I have, this is the one that I've been the most excited to show off. The diecast toys are the toys I'm the least familiar with. I was a wooden railway and Trackmaster kid, and I only had around 5 or so diecast items growing up. It wasn't until I was an adult when I really started to gain an appreciation for these toys. Wooden Railway is the most charming line, Trackmaster is the most enjoyable, but I think the diecast Thomas toys are the most detailed and accurate versions of the characters. The colors pop, they have great attention to detail, and for the most part, scale pretty well with each other. Not to mention, in the early days, one character's weight was equivalent to that of 5 African elephants. These things were super heavy. I actually can't lift this. But for $5 toys, these were really impressive. And what's even more impressive, diecast Thomas toys are still being made today. For over 40 years, diecast Thomas toys have proved to be some of the most popular Thomas toys, and I'm really happy to see they're still kicking strong. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't grow up with these, and I got about 80 to 90% of them in multiple big lots from Facebook Marketplace and such, so there's not really much of a story to tell with them. Similar to the Trackmaster video, I'm going to speed run through a majority of the items, but if there's something worthwhile to share, I'll share it. We're going to go year by year this time, starting in the late 80s and ending with current day. Let's start with not only the first diecast line, but the pioneer of Thomas merchandise. Here is my ERTL collection. And that'll do it for my ERTL stuff. If I'm being totally honest, I'm not the biggest fan of ERTL. Some of the scaling is a bit off, and the coupling system is laughably cheap, but I can't deny how important these toys are. These paved the way for all Thomas toys going forward, and definitely showed how diverse the cast of characters could be. ERTL made so many different items, some of which weren't even in the show or had faces, but it was that sense of world building that made this line so memorable. ERTL proved to be very popular into the early 2000s, but in 2002, a new line of diecast Thomas toys was introduced. One that took the concept of collectible Thomas toys and soared with it. I fucking love Take Long. These improve on almost all of the faults of ERTL. The scaling and sizing is better, the characters were given more weight, and the coupling system was infinity times better. Learning Curve created this ingenious dual magnet system so you could hook up your trains any way you wanted. Probably one of the cleverest moves ever made to a Thomas toy. Let's dive in. Wow, what a great toy line. This is going to be quite the shocker to all of you who have been fans of my channel for a while, but my personal favorites are probably Donald and Douglas, Oliver, Toad, and Henry. Not only are those my favorite characters, but these toys are literally perfect. They look just like how they look in the show. Absolutely wonderful. In 2009, Mattel acquired the rights to the diecast line, and they rebranded it into Take and Play in 2010. Similar to Trackmaster, the items became even more detailed than before, and we still had a really nice array of characters in a time where we barely had any in the show. I don't have as many items from the early Take and Play era, but the ones I do have are really damn nice, especially when we get to 2013. Sheesh! Again, what a great selection of items. I'm a really big fan of Thomas, Edward, Diesel, Harvey, and Duck. I was really happy when these items were given accurate CGI faces. Though it was a short-lived era, these were definitely the most striking diecast Thomas toys. Man, 2013 was such a great time to be a Thomas fan. The show was getting good again, and all of the toy lines were at their absolute peak. How I wish we could return to this level of consistency. Now, we come to the dark era. Just as the show was increasing in quality, the toys dipped. Drastically. Like, what the hell happened? Along with the demise of Trackmaster came the demise of Take and Play. The proportions of the engines were severely butchered, they started to feel significantly cheaper, the sets started to become so much more gimmicky, and, worst of all, the magnets. Instead of the smart, subtle magnets, some genius at Mattel decided to rip the magnets off of the Thomas Wooden Railway items and make the diecast line look like a complete embarrassment. I cannot believe these were given the green light and lasted as long as they did. Like Trackmaster 2, I was really offended by these changes as a 10-year-old. I only went out of my way to get one fat magnet Take and Play item back in the day. The rest I got by complete happenstance and Facebook lots. Some of them are satisfactory, but the rest are complete jokes. Let's take a look. While Take and Play was souring everyone in America and the UK, another range was actually proving to be quite decent across the pond. In 2014, the Collectible railway line was introduced, and was essentially the international version of Take and Play. But instead of big, grotesque magnets, the engines were designed with these really nice rotatable hook and loop couplings. I'm not sure why Fat Magnet Take and Play wasn't sold in other countries, but these couplings are so much better. They're so much more subtle than the magnets, and harken back to the Take and Play era in the sense that you can connect the engines any way you want. While making this video, I actually learned that these couplings were carryovers from a line of Hot Wheels toys Mattel had developed a few years earlier. That is an extremely clever way of reusing old assets. Take and Play was canned in 2016, and in 2017, this form of connection was brought overseas and Adventures was born. The engines still use the same bodies as the Take and Plays, but they look so much more natural with these hooks. I don't have many Adventures models. I do have the standard version of Thomas, who is still severely flawed, but the coupling system slightly makes up for it. I also have this Talking Thomas, and I wanted this one because of his shape. This reuses the pre-2014 style of construction. I understand that this was designed specifically for the talking feature, but why the hell couldn't this have been the standard version? It looks so much better with that big tall cab. And rounding out the Adventures library is the green LBSC Thomas from The Adventure Begins. I'm really happy this was made into a model, though I was always puzzled as to why it came out so late. The movie had already been out for 2 years by the time this toy came out. Why wasn't it made during the Take and Play era? But hey, at least we didn't get a green Thomas with fat magnets. That would have looked horrible. Adventures strangely only lasted for about 2 years before this was ushered in, the Trackmaster push-along line. I'll spare you my complaints because most of them speak for themselves, but you can make an entire video detailing why this is the worst Thomas toy line. Without a doubt, this is the lowest point for the diecast Thomas toys. This is just horrible. That just isn't Thomas. I did get a few Trackmaster push-along items throughout the years, but I never felt the desire to keep any of them besides this one. Sonny was one of the last new characters introduced for Thomas and Friends, and even though his toy is severely disproportionate, this was the only way to get a Sonny toy in America. And I have to admit, that is a wonderful face. I'm so happy he wasn't given a standard happy one. I do have a few new in-box push-along items. Released for the 75th anniversary, here I have both versions of the Diamond Thomas. In mid-2020, the packaging was redesigned to bring more life back into Thomas merchandise, and it was definitely for the better. I do really like this new box, but if I'm being honest, I don't think either of these boxes do a very good job at conveying the speciality of this toy. I guess the OG box is a bit more notable since it has that seal on it, but I wish they had done something completely different for this item. And rounding out classic push-along is the Gay Herald. This was such a hot commodity when it first came out, and I had to get it. Memes and jokes aside, it's actually a pretty nice model. It does seem pretty creative, and I really like how the box and Herald's render were spiced up a bit. It's kind of funny that we really struggled to get toys of characters that were in the show at the time, yet a few years later we get toys based off of YouTube learning videos. Hilarious. Now, we all know what happened next. All Engines Go came in and the toys were all redesigned to match the style of the show. I've personally never seen the show, so I can't really say if it's good or not, but I will say the toys are a huge step up. Since the designs in the show are a lot more chunkier and simpler than the CG models, they translated very well into toy form, and they actually scale really nicely with the chassis. I did a whole video talking about these toys, so if you want to hear my thoughts on them, go and check that out. But for now, let's speedrun this shit. In commemoration with the 80th anniversary in 2025, Mattel redesigned the diecast line again, but they gave us much better looking diecast toys. Though we only have 4 characters, I can't deny how good they look. And since we only have 4, let's talk about them. Here's the standard Thomas. I absolutely love this version of Thomas. This is, without a doubt, the best Thomas has ever looked in diecast form. If he had the take-along magnets, he'd literally be perfect. In fact, I actually see a lot of inspiration from all the previous lines here. The coupling rods are very reminiscent of ERTL, the weight reminds me of take-along, the body and face channel 2013 Take and Play well, and he sits very nicely on the Trackmaster push-along chassis. A wonderful toy. I actually have quite a few versions of this guy new in the box because he's just that awesome. And here's the ever infamous Railway Series Thomas. This is such a cool item. I love the effort to channel his Railway Series appearance, and the box is top notch. You can really tell this was designed by people who care about Thomas. I also have 2 new ones in the box. Don't worry, I'm not going to scalp them or hoard them for myself. I'm keeping one for myself and I'm giving the other one away to a lucky fan. Once I hit 10,000 subscribers, this could all be yours. Here's Mattel's 80th Ruby Thomas. Mattel and the Railway Series were both formed in 1945 and celebrated their anniversaries simultaneously this year. I really like this Thomas. The face is much more natural than his standard one, he's free from his rivet detailing, and the ruby running board along with the gold whistle and silver side rods really pop. An awesome item. But I can't really say the same for the rolling stock. Not only are they retoolings of pieces from the All Engines Go line, but they're painted in this incredibly cheap silver paint that comes off so incredibly easily. Mine have thankfully not deteriorated yet, but that's a huge fuck up. At least the rubies look cool. I also have 2 of these new in the box. I really like how the box was presented, and I'm really happy to say I was able to find at least one of them in a physical store. Here's a custom I made. It's basically the Ruby Thomas on the running board of the standard one. I think this looks really awesome. I really like how the side rods contrast with the whole model. And for good measure, here's the other Frankenstein Thomas with the extra trucks. Moving on to Percy next. I really like this Percy. His face is a bit uncharacteristically cute, but the rest of the model is awesome. I love that he was given a smaller chassis. And like Thomas, I have a couple versions of him still in the packaging. Here's James. James is probably the one I'm the most mixed on. He's almost perfect, but he has a few glaring discrepancies. I'm not really a fan of the wheels or the side rods, and he does seem a bit gargantuan, but he does have a nice face at least. And here are a few of him new in the box. Huge shout out to Steam Oddity for giving me one before he came out in the States. Thanks a lot, Nate, you're a real one. And the last new character we have is Henry. I'm so grateful that he was made in this line, but if I'm being honest, he looks a little odd. He's not bad at all, but I just wish he was made a bit longer. I do really like the tender though, even though it's made entirely of plastic. Thanks a lot, Mattel. And I also have 2 of him new in the box. Minor side note, but why are all of the Tender Engine's names printed so small at the top of the box? There's all this space by the 80th logo, why couldn't they just move that up by the Steam Cloud and move the name down a little bit so it'd be properly centered? Very odd design choice. And ending off the video is the Sodor Adventure Pack. Half of its contents are repeated, but we do have a few exclusives. Annie and Clarabelle are really lame. They're literally just the 2019 versions with updated details. Those details are really nice though, and I really like how they were given their own faces. Thomas is also a bit lame, but I do really appreciate that we weren't given a stock standard one. I do wish we had a more substantial pack than this though. An Adventure Begins theme pack would have been awesome. And with that, we reach the end of my diecast collection. This form of Thomas merchandise has arguably had the most turbulent journey of any line. Ever since 2013, the toys have changed every 2 or 3 years, and they're continuing to change quite frequently to this day. Similar to the motorized line, we're apparently getting a new offering for the diecast line next year, and we're supposedly getting magnets back on them. I'll believe it when I see it, but if we can return to the days of take-along with the cool magnets, a wide cast of characters, and a sense of passion behind the toys, I will totally forgive Mattel for re-releasing the 2019 models. I highly recommend you pick up some diecast Thomas toys. Definitely grab those new ones, but if you have a little more money to splurge, grab the take-along stuff. These are the most detailed and accurate Thomas toys ever, and you'll have such a fun time collecting everything.